It was raining that night, the kind of cold, endless rain that makes the city lights blur into tiny, trembling stars on the pavement. Inside a small downtown cafe, Lena sat by the window, nervously stirring her untouched latte. She had been on dozens of blind dates before, each one starting with fragile hope and ending with quiet disappointment. But this one felt heavier, like it carried the weight of everything she'd lost and everything she still dared to dream of. Her heart wasn't just guarded anymore. It was patched, bruised, and scared of being broken again. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and love that heals instead of hurts, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps stories like this one reach more hearts who need hope. Lena adjusted her soft blue scarf and checked the time again. Her date, Ryan, was late. 15 minutes late. She thought about leaving, but then the cafe door opened with a sharp chime. A tall man in an expensive coat walked in, shaking rain from his sleeves. He looked around, eyes narrowing slightly as he spotted her. He walked over with confidence, but something in his gaze felt cold. "You're Lena, right?" he asked, setting his phone on the table without a smile. "I'm Ryan." She nodded politely, trying to ignore the judgment in his tone. He ordered black coffee, sat back, and began what felt less like a date and more like an interview. He asked about her job, her past relationships, and even how long she'd been single this time. She answered gently, carefully, though her hands trembled slightly when she mentioned her divorce. When she told him she couldn't have children because of a medical condition after a car accident years ago, his expression shifted, subtle but sharp, like a door closing. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and said quietly, "So you're damaged goods then?" The words hit her like a slap. For a moment she couldn't breathe. The cafe noise faded. All she heard was the thudding of her own heart. She smiled weakly, trying not to let her tears show. "I guess that's one way to put it," she whispered. He shrugged, unapologetic. "I'm just being honest. I want someone with a future, you know? Someone who hasn't already lost too much." He stood up, tossed a few bills on the table, and left without looking back. Lena sat there for a long time, staring at the steam rising from her cold coffee. The rain outside had softened, but inside her chest, the storm was still raging. She hated herself for feeling small, for letting one cruel sentence reopen all the wounds she'd tried so hard to heal. The waiter approached quietly, a man in his mid-30s with warm brown eyes and sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He'd been serving her table all evening, quietly watching the scene unfold. He placed a napkin beside her untouched latte and said softly, "You don't have to finish that. It's gone bitter." She gave him a faint smile. "Kind of like my night." He smiled back, not out of pity, but understanding. "Maybe, but bitterness fades too, just takes time and a little warmth." There was something in his voice, gentle, steady, that made her chest ache. She noticed the faint tiredness in his eyes, the kind that comes from holding too much together for too long. She stayed until closing time, lost in her thoughts, while the last few customers left. The rain had stopped, and the city outside had gone quiet. As the lights dimmed, she realized she was the only one still sitting there. When the waiter finally untied his apron, he hesitated for a moment, then walked over and sat down across from her. The gesture was so unexpected, so kind, that she couldn't help but stare. "I'm sorry," he said. "I wasn't eavesdropping, but I heard enough. People can be cruel, but they don't get to decide your worth." She blinked, caught off guard by his sincerity. "You don't even know me." He smiled softly. "Maybe not yet, but I know what it's like to be written off too. Soon." His name was Eli. He told her he used to be a teacher before his wife passed away 3 years ago, leaving him to raise their 6-year-old daughter, Maya, alone. He worked double shifts at the cafe to pay for her school and dreamed of opening a small bookshop one day. A quiet place filled with stories and second chances. Lena listened, her heart warming with every word. He didn't try to comfort her with cliches or empty flattery. He just shared his truth, his scars laid bare without shame. It felt healing. That night, when she finally stepped out into the cool night air, she looked up at the moon peeking through the clouds and realized she wasn't crying anymore. For the first time in years, she felt something like peace. Days turned into weeks. Lena began stopping by the cafe more often, not for the coffee, but for the calm that came with Eli's quiet company. Sometimes they talked about books, sometimes about loss, and sometimes they just sat in silence, letting the comfort of understanding fill the spaces words couldn't reach. Maya, bright-eyed and curious, would often run up to Lena when she visited, asking her to read stories or draw with her. There was something healing in the laughter of that little girl, something that made the cracks in Lena's heart slowly close. One evening, Eli invited her to a local fair. It wasn't a date, at least not officially, but when Maya grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the carousel, Lena felt something gentle and new blooming inside her. She laughed for the first time in so long that it startled even her. As the lights twinkled and music played softly, Eli watched her from a distance. When their eyes met, he smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the heart. And in that simple exchange, something shifted. He didn't see her as broken. He saw her as brave. But life wasn't a fairy tale. There were days when Lena still doubted herself, still heard Ryan's cruel words echoing in her head. One night, after walking home alone, she sat on her bed and whispered, "Maybe I am damaged goods." The next morning, she found a note taped to her favorite cafe mug. In Eli's neat handwriting, it read, "Things that have been broken often hold more beauty in the way they're repaired. That's what makes them priceless." She cried when she read it, not out of sadness but gratitude. Weeks later, she attended Maya's school recital. Eli was nervous, pacing in the back row, holding flowers too big for one hand. Lena sat beside him, smiling as Maya sang her tiny heart out. Halfway through the performance, Maya spotted her and waved after the recital. Maya ran straight into Lena's arms and said, "Daddy says you're special." Lena laughed softly, blushing, but Eli's eyes were steady when he met hers. "I meant it," he said. "You are. More than you'll ever know." The cafe where they'd met became their quiet sanctuary. Every time Lena passed the window where she once sat alone, she remembered that night. Not for the cruelty that broke her heart, but for the kindness that began to mend it. Months later, on a calm evening just like that first one, she found Eli waiting at their usual table. The lights were dim, the world outside washed in gold. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting with a small velvet box. He took a deep breath and said, "I don't have much to offer, just a daughter who already adores you and a heart that's been rebuilt piece by piece. But if you'll have us, we'd like to call you ours." Her tears fell freely this time, not from pain but from the indescribable fullness of finally being seen, wholly and without conditions. She didn't say yes with words. She just reached across the table, took his trembling hands, and nodded. In that moment, everything she'd lost found its way back, not in the same shape, but in something truer, stronger. She wasn't damaged goods. She was living proof that love doesn't look for perfection. It looks for courage, compassion, and the beauty hidden inside every scar. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories of love, loss, and healing to those who need them most.